might have been weeks.
Dove Audio presents I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream, and Other Stories. The Voice of the Edge, Volume 1, by Harlan Ellison.
I have no mouth, and I must scream. Limp. The body of Gorrister hung from the pink palette, unsupported, hanging high above us in the computer chamber. And it did not shiver in the chill, oily breeze that blew internally through the main cavern. The body hung, head down, attached to the underside of the pallet by the sole of his right foot. It had been drained of blood through a precise incision made from ear to ear into the lantern jaw. There was no blood on the reflective surface of the metal floor. When Gorrister joined our group and looked up at himself, it was already too late for us to realize that once again, Am had duped us, had had its fun. It had been a diversion on the part of the machine. Three of us had vomited, turning away from one another in a reflex as ancient as the nausea that had produced it. Gorrister went white. It was almost as though he had seen a voodoo icon and was afraid of the future. Oh, God, he mumbled and walked away. The three of us followed him after a time and found him sitting with his back to one of the smaller chittering banks, his head in his hands. Ellen knelt down beside him and stroked his hair. He didn't move, but his voice came out of his covered face quite clearly. Why doesn't it just do us in and get it over with? Christ, I don't know how much longer I can go on like this. It was our 109th year in the computer, and he was speaking for all of us. Nimdoc, which was the name the machine had forced him to use because Am amused itself with strange sounds. Nimdoc was hallucinating that there were canned goods in the ice caverns. Gorrister and I were very dubious. It's another shuck, I told him. Like the goddamn frozen elephant Am sold us. Benny almost went out of his mind over that one. We'll hike all that way and it'll be putrefied or some damn thing. I say forget it, stay here. It'll have to come up with something pretty soon or we'll die. Benny shrugged. 3 days it had been since we last eaten. Worms. Thick. Ropey. Nimdoc was no more certain. He knew there was the chance, but it was getting thin. Couldn't be any worse there than here. Colder, but that didn't matter much. Hot, cold, hail, lava, boils, or locusts, never mattered. The machine masturbated and we had to take it or die. Ellen decided us. I've got to have something, Ted. Maybe there'll be some bottomless pears or peaches. Please, Ted, let's try it. I gave in easily. What the hell? Mattered not at all. Ellen was grateful, though. She took me twice out of turn. Even that had ceased to matter. And she never came, so why bother? But the machine giggled every time we did it. Loud, up there, back there, all around us, he snickered. It snickered. Most of the time I thought of Am as it, without a soul. But the rest of the time I thought of it as him, the masculine, the paternal, the patriarchal, for he is a jealous people. Him, it, God is Daddy the deranged. We left on a Thursday. The machine always kept us up to date on the date. Passage of time was important. Not to us, sure as hell, but to him. Am. Thursday. Thanks. Nimdoc and Gorrister carried on for a while, their hands locked to their own and each other's wrists a seat. Benny and I walked before and after just to make sure that if anything happened, it would catch one of us, and at least Ellen would be safe. That chance safe. Didn't matter. It was only 100 miles or so to the ice caverns, and the second day when we were lying out under the blistering sun thing he had materialized, he sent down some manna. It's like boiled boar urine. We ate it. On the third day we passed through a valley of obsolescence, filled with rusting carcasses of ancient computer banks. Am had been as ruthless with its own life as with ours. It was a mark of his personality. It strove for perfection. Whether it was a matter of killing off unproductive elements in his own world-filling bulk, or perfecting methods for torturing us, Am was as thorough as those who had invented him, now long since gone to dust. As thorough as they could ever have hoped. There was light filtering down from above, and we realized we must be very near the surface, but we didn't try to cross. There was virtually nothing out there. Had been nothing that could be considered anything for over 100 years. Only the blasted skin of what had once been the home of billions. Now, there were only 5 of us down here, inside, alone with Am. I heard Ellen saying frantically, "No, Benny, don't, come on now, Benny, no, don't, please." And then I realized I had been hearing Benny murmuring under his breath for several minutes, listening, "I'm going to get out, I'm going to get out," over and over. His monkey-like face was crumpled up in an expression of beatific delight and sadness all at the same time. And the radiation scars Am had given him during the festival were drawn down into a mass of pink-white puckerings, and his features seemed to work independently of one another. Perhaps Benny was the luckiest of the 5 of us. He had gone stark, staring mad many years before. But even though we could call Am any damn thing we liked, could think the foulest thoughts of fused memory banks and corroded base plates, of burnt-out circuits and shattered control bubbles, the machine would not tolerate our trying to escape. Benny leaped away from me as I made a grab for him. He scrambled up the face of a smaller memory cube, tilted on its side and filled with rotted components. He squatted there for a moment, looking like the chimpanzee Am had intended him to resemble. And then he leaped high, caught a trailing beam of pitted and corroded metal, and went up and hand over hand like an elephant. He was on a girdered ledge 20 feet above us. "Oh, Dad, Nimda, please help him, get him down before..." She cut off. Tears began to stand in her eyes. She moved her hands aimlessly. No, it was too late. None of us wanted to be near him when whatever was going to happen, happened. And besides, we all saw through her concern. When Am had altered Benny during the machine's utterly irrational, hysterical phase, it was not merely Benny's face the computer had made like a giant ape. He was big in the privates. She loved that. She serviced us as a matter of course, but she loved it from him. Oh, Ellen, pedestal Ellen, pristine, pure Ellen. Oh, Ellen, the clean scum filth. Gorster slapped her. She slumped down, staring up at poor loony Benny, and she cried. It was her big defense, crying. We had gotten used to it 75 years earlier. Gorster kicked her in the side, and then the sound began. It was light, that sound. Half sound and half light. Something that began to glow from Benny's eyes and pulse with growing loudness, dim sonorities that grew more gigantic and brighter as the light sound increased in tempo. It must have been painful, and the pain must have been increasing with the boldness of the light, the rising volume of the sound, because Benny began to mewl like a wounded animal, at first softly. The light was dim and the sound was muted, and then louder as his shoulders hunched together, his back humped as though he were trying to get away from it, his hands folded across his chest like a chipmunk's, his head tilted to the side, his sad little monkey face pinched in anguish, and then he began to howl as the sound coming from his eyes grew louder and louder. I slapped the sides of my head with my hands, but I couldn't shut it out. It cut through easily. The pain through my flesh like tinfoil on a tooth, and Benny was suddenly pulled erect. On the girder he stood up, jerked to his feet like a puppet. The light was now pulsing out of his eyes in 2 great round beams. The sound crawled up and up some incomprehensible scale, and then he fell forward, straight down, and hit the plate steel floor with a crash. And he lay there jerking spastically as the light flowed around him, and the sound spiraled up out of normal range. And then the light beat its way back inside his head. The sound spiraled down, and he was left lying there, crying piteously. His eyes were 2 soft, moist pools of pus-like jelly. Am had blinded him. Gorster and Nimdoc and myself, we turned away. But not before we caught the look of relief on Ellen's warm, concerned face. sea green lights suffused the cavern where we made camp. Am provided punk and we burned it, sitting huddled around the wan and pathetic fire, telling stories to keep Benny from his permanent night. What does AM mean? Forrester answered him. We had done this sequence 1,000 times before, but it was Benny's favorite story. At first it meant Allied Master Computer, AM, but then it meant Adaptive Manipulator, and later on it developed sentience and linked itself up, and they called it an Aggressive Menace, AM. But by then it was too late, and finally it called itself AM, Emerging Intelligence. And what it means was, I am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Benny drooled a little and snickered. There was the Chinese am, and the Russian am, and the Yankee am, and he stopped. Benny was beating on the floor plates with a large hard fist. He was not happy. Gorster had not started at the beginning. So Gorster began again. The Cold War started and became World War III and just kept going. It became a big war, very complex war, so they needed the computers to handle it. They sank the first shafts and began building AM. There was the Chinese AM, and the Russian AM, and the Yankee AM, and everything was fine until they had honeycombed the entire planet, adding on this element and that element. But one day, AM woke and knew who he was, and he linked himself, and he began feeding all the killing data until everyone was dead, except for the 5 of us. And AM brought us down here. Benny was smiling sadly. He was also drooling again. Ellen wiped the spittle from the corner of his mouth with the hem of her skirt. Forrester always tried to tell a little more succinctly each time, but beyond the bare facts, there was nothing to say. None of us knew why Am had saved 5 people, or why our specific 5, or why he spent all his time tormenting us, nor even why he had made us virtually immortal. In the darkness, the computer banks began humming. The tone was picked up half a mile away down the cavern by another bank, and then one by one each of the elements began to tune itself, and there was a faint chittering as thought raced through the machine. The sound grew, and the lights ran across the faces of the consoles like heat lightning. The sound spiraled up till it sounded like a million metallic insects, angry, menacing. What is it? Ellen cried. There was terror in her voice. She hadn't become accustomed to it even now. It's going to be bad this time. He's going to speak, Forrester said. I know it. Let's get the hell out of here, I said, suddenly getting to my feet. No, Ted, sit down. What if he's got pits out there or something else we can't see? It's too dark. Forrester said it was resignation. And then we heard something moving toward us in the darkness, huge, shambling, hairy voice that came toward us. We couldn't even see it, but there was the ponderous impression of bone heaving itself toward us. Great weight was coming at us out of the darkness, and it was more a sense of pressure, of air forcing itself into a limited space, expanding the invisible walls of a sphere. Benny began to whimper. Nimdok's lower lip trembled, and he bit it hard, trying to stop it. Ellen slid across the metal floor to Gorster and huddled into him. There was the smell of matted, wet fur in the cavern. There was the smell of charred wood. There was the smell of dusty velvet. There was the smell of rotting orchids. There was the smell of sour milk. There was the smell of sulfur, of rancid butter, of oil slick, of grease, of chalk, dust, of human scalps. Am was keying us. He was tickling us. There was the smell of... I heard myself shriek, and the hinges of my jaws ached. I scuttled across the floor, across the cold metal with its endless lines of rivets on my hands and knees, the smell gagging me, filling my head with a thunderous pain that sent me away in horror. I fled like a cockroach across the floor and out into the darkness, that something moving inexorably after me. The others were still back there, gathered around the firelight, laughing, their hysterical choir of insane giggles rising up into the darkness like thick, many-colored wood smoke. I went away quickly, and hid. How many hours it may have been, how many days or even years, they never told me. Ellen chided me for sulking, and Nimdok tried to persuade me it had only been a nervous reflex on their part, the last a soldier feels when the bullet hits the man next to him. No, 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 no. I knew it wasn't a reflex. They hated me. They were surely against me. And Am could even sense this hatred and made it worse for me because of the depth of their hatred. We had been kept alive, rejuvenated, made to remain constantly at the age we had been when Am had brought us below, and they hated me because I was the youngest and the one Am had affected least of all, you see. See, I knew. God, how I knew. The bastards and that dirty bitch Ellen. Benny had been a brilliant theorist, a college professor, and now he was little more than a semi-human, semi-simian. He had been handsome. The machine had ruined that. He had been lucid. The machine had driven him mad. He had been gay. And the machine had given him an organ fit for a horse. Am had done a job on Benny. Gorrister had been a warrior. He was a commie, a conscientious objector. He was a peace marcher. He was a planner, a doer, a looker ahead. Am had turned him into a shoulder shrugger, had made him a little dead in his concern. Am had robbed him. Doc went off in the darkness by himself for long times. I don't know what it was he did out there. Am never let us know. But whatever it was, Doc always came back right, drained of blood, shaken and shaking Am, and hit him hard. In a special way, even if he didn't know quite how. And Ellen, that douchebag, Am had left her alone, had made her more of a slut than she had ever been. All her talk of sweetness and light, all her memories of true love, all the lies she wanted us to believe, that she had been a virgin only twice removed before Am had grabbed her and brought her down here with us, was all filth. That lady, my lady Ellen, she loved it. 4 men all to herself. No. Am had given her pleasure, even if she said it wasn't nice to do it. And I was the only one still sane and whole. Really? Am had not tampered with my mind. Not at all. You see, I only had to suffer what he visited down on us. All the delusions, all the nightmares, the torments, but those scum, all 4 of them, they were lined and arrayed against me. If I hadn't had to stand them off all the time, and be on my guard against them all the time, I might have found it easier to combat Am.